picture this for a second. You're behind the wheel of a massive rig. You've got 18 wheels, 500 horsepower, and that engine is just humming.
That low growl.
Yeah, that growl. You're cruising down I-10 or I-5, and you feel like the absolute king of the asphalt. You own the highway.
The logistics network is your playground.
Exactly. But then you hit the West Coast. Specifically, you hit the Pacific Ocean.
The road literally ends.
It ends. You hit the brakes, and suddenly that feeling of dominance, it vanishes. And for a huge chunk of the logistics industry, that coastline isn't just where the pavement stops.
No, it's where the revenue stops. It's a hard stop. In the industry, we actually call this the port wall.
The port wall. It sounds so dramatic, but looking at the data we have today, it's a massive financial barrier that I think most people don't even realize they're crashing into.
They don't.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're unpacking a stack of internal strategies and case studies from GRG Transportation Consulting. And, while these focus on logistics between the mainland U.S. and Hawaii, this isn't just an island story, is it?
Not at all. Hawaii is just the perfect laboratory for this. It's a closed loop that reveals these huge, hidden inefficiencies that apply to anyone moving goods really anywhere.
We're talking about why businesses are losing hundreds of thousands of dollars paying for what you call empty air.
And how these psychological barriers, a literal fear of the water, are blocking growth.
It's fascinating because it exposes this core tension in logistics. Most operations are built for stability, keep the trucks moving, keep the lights on, don't rock the boat.
Right, but they aren't built for growth. And when you dig into these documents, you realize the answer isn't just buying more trucks. It's about dismantling these invisible barriers and rethinking pricing models that are, frankly, just archaic.
So let's start with this port wall. I love that image because it feels so visceral. You have these trucking fleets, they're so confident on the pavement, but they view offshore points like Hawaii as just dead in their tracks. Why is that?
It's psychological, but it's rooted in very real operational friction. Think about the profile of a domestic carrier. They know the interstates, they know the truck stops, they know their dispatch rhythms, but the ocean represents a total black box.
It represents a handover that feels messy.
It is messy, and the sources point out that a lot of carriers act as if there's this imaginary force field at the shoreline. They assume shipping to Hawaii is the exclusive playground of the giants, the Matsons or Pashas of the world.
They think that's not my lane.
Not my lane. But the data in the source material suggests that not my lane is a very expensive mindset.
Yeah, I was looking at the breakdown here, and the volume of freight being left on the table is just staggering.
It is. Let's just look at the map that GRG provides. They did this analysis where they filtered out the massive players, J.B. Hunt, Werner, CRST.
Big guys who have their own systems.
Right. They have their own dedicated infrastructure. And they also stripped away the complicated stuff, hazardous materials, temp-controlled loads.
So we're just talking about standard, boring, everyday dry goods.
Exactly. The stuff that fits in a dry van. Even with all those filters, you're looking at roughly 70 container loads fitting that profile being hauled to the Long Beach port for Hawaii.
70 loads.
Every single sailing.
Wow. And that's just one port.
That's just Long Beach. So if you expand that to the big three on the West Coast, Long Beach, Oakland, and Seattle, you're looking at about 280 containers every single week.
That is a massive amount of freight. And just to be clear for everyone listening, this isn't new freight just appearing out of nowhere.
No, and that's the key insight here. If you're a carrier, your existing customers are likely the ones shipping this stuff.
Whoa.
They're just giving that specific slice of business to someone else, usually a big 3PL or a specialized forwarder, because you haven't raised your hand and said, I can handle that.
So you're basically leaving the door wide open for a competitor to walk in and handle a key part of your client's supply chain. That seems really risky.
It's incredibly risky because once a competitor gets a foot in the door with the Hawaii freight, what's next? They start asking about the mainland freight too. Hey, since we're moving this to Honolulu, why don't we just handle the move from Chicago to LA as well?
Okay, but let's play devil's advocate. Carriers aren't dumb. They know where the money is. So why do they avoid it? Is the port wall just laziness, or is there a legitimate operational nightmare waiting for them at the docks?
It's a nightmare. Let's not sugarcoat it. If you run a fleet, the absolute last place you want your driver is a maritime port.
Okay, walk us through the pain. Why is it so bad?
It's everything. First, your driver needs a TWIC card.
Transportation Worker Identification Credential.
Right. Not every driver has one. If your guy shows up without one, they're not getting in. End of story.
Barrier number one, what's next?
Then you have the queue, the line. You could be waiting hours just to get to the gate. I mean, we're not talking 15 minutes. We're talking idling in a line that can stretch for miles.
And all the while, the driver's hours of service clock is just ticking down.
Tick, tick, tick. They are burning their legal driving time, sitting in a line moving 0 miles per hour. It just kills your utilization.
Okay, so let's say you finally get in.
Right. Now you have the chassis inspection.
The chassis, okay, that's the trailer the container sits on.
Exactly. And if you're pulling a container and that chassis has a bad tire or a mud flap is missing or a light is out, you don't just get to leave.
Oh, no.
You get sent to the roadability lane.
The roadability lane. That sounds like purgatory.
It is. You're stuck there waiting for union mechanics to fix the equipment. You could be there for hours.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, dispatchers hate the ports. Drivers hate the ports. The port wall is built on the fear of that hassle.
So the carrier says, I'm not doing that. I'll just drop the load at some warehouse in LA and let someone else deal with the ocean.
Precisely. But the source material outlines this strategy that claims to bypass this whole mess while keeping the revenue. They call it a plug-and-play solution.
How can you ship to Hawaii without going to the port? That seems physically impossible.
This is the smart pivot. The strategy is that the driver never, ever sees the ocean.
Okay.
Instead of driving into that Port Authority trap, they drive to a designated consolidation warehouse nearby.
So it's just a standard loading dock environment for them.
Exactly. It looks like every other DC they go to.
Yeah.
The driver pulls up, backs in, they're promptly unloaded. We're talking normal turnover times, not port wait times. They get their paperwork signed, and boom, they're back on the road to their next scheduled load.
So the carrier's asset, the truck and the driver, it just stays in its native habitat. It stays on the road.
Exactly. The friction is completely removed.
But the freight still has to get to the ship.
Right, but that becomes the problem of the service provider. In this case, a firm like GRG. They take the freight, they cross-dock it.
Meaning they move it from the inbound truck to an outbound ocean container.
Right. They seal it and they shuttle it to the port using their own local drayage drivers who do nothing but run that loop all day long.
I see. So you're decoupling the long-haul driver from that last mile into the port.
And that completely changes the revenue model for the carrier. Because now they can say yes to that Hawaii shipment. They get paid for the haul to the coast. They keep the customer relationship for the entire journey, but they don't have to deal with the maritime headache.
The phrase that stood out to me in the notes was, the truck starts at the coast, but the revenue shouldn't. That just sums it up perfectly.
That's the aha moment for the carrier. You stop treating the ocean as a barrier and you start treating it as just another handover point.
Okay, so that handles the trucking side. That's how you get the goods to the water without losing your mind. But once the goods are in the container, the source material pivots to the person paying the bill.
The shipper.
And this is where it gets really painful.
This is the wait-out trap.
The wait-out trap. It sounds like a dieting plateau, but I have a feeling it's going to hurt the wallet a lot more. Walk us through this.
It's the shipper's nightmare. To understand it, you have to remember the two constraints of any shipping container. You have volume, how much space is physically inside the box, and you have weight, how heavy the cargo is.
Right, the classic feathers versus lead problem.
Exactly. And the legal weight limit for a container moving on U.S. roads is roughly, 44 to 45,000 pounds of cargo. The weight-out trap happens when you have dense, heavy stuff. You hit that 45,000-pound limit.
But the container's still half empty.
Or more. But in a traditional model, you still pay for the whole container. If you book a full container load, an FCL, you are paying for exclusive use of that box. The steamship line doesn't care that you're only using a third of the space. They charge you the full slot rate.
So you are literally paying to ship air across the Pacific Ocean.
Very expensive air.
There was a specific case study in here that just made my jaw drop. The one about the client shipping non-hazardous petroleum liquids.
Yes, this is the perfect example of the trap. This client was shipping these industrial fluids in what are called totes.
And for anyone who doesn't know, totes are those big, square cage plastic tanks on pallets, right?
Correct. IBC totes. And they're very, very dense. So this client puts 16 of these totes into a 40-foot container.
16 totes. That really doesn't sound like a lot.
It's not volume-wise, but those 16 totes weigh about 41,000 pounds.
Okay, so they right up against the legal weight limit. They can't add another tote without being overweight.
Exactly. The container is full by weight, but physically. Their 16 totes only occupied 780 cubic feet of space.
780 cubic feet. And how big is a standard 40-foot container?
A standard container has a capacity of nearly 2,400 cubic feet.
So do the math for me there. That is
They are utilizing less than 1/3 of the container's volume. About 32% to be exact.
32%. So 68% of that container is just empty space.
Empty space that they paid full price for. And because it's Hawaii, it is not cheap. When you factor in all the fees, terminal handling, fuel surcharges, wharfage, the cost for that single load eclipsed $10,000.
$10,000 to ship a box that's mostly empty. That is just painful.
It's pure waste,
Yeah.
but the shipper didn't know there was another way. They just thought, I have heavy load, I need a container. They didn't see the trap they were in.
So how do you get out of it? The source talks about a mix and match solution. Is this just like LTL by another name?
It's similar, but it's much more strategic. It's essentially logistics Tetris. A specialized consolidator looks at that petroleum shipment. They see a heavy, dense layer on the floor.
Okay.
Then they look for another customer. Maybe someone shipping insulation or pillows or, plastic toys.
Feathers to their lead.
Exactly. Something that takes up a huge amount of space but weighs almost nothing. They stack the light stuff on top of the heavy stuff. They mix and match within the same container.
And the savings come because you're essentially splitting the rent on the container.
You stop paying for the whole box and you start paying only for the space you actually occupy. The petroleum guy pays for the floor space. The pillow guy pays for the airspace.
So what did that do for the petroleum client in the case study? What were the results?
It was dramatic. By switching to this model, they reduced their effective container rate by over 50%.
50%. That is not a rounding error.
No. And when you look at the year-to-date impact, across 48 full loads, this family-owned business saved $238,978.
Nearly $250,000. That is pure margin. That goes straight to the bottom line.
And think about what that money represents. Before, that $250,000 was just evaporating into the supply chain. It was just waste.
But here's my skeptical question. If I'm that shipper, do I have to go find the guy with the pillows? Do I have to manage all that coordination? Because that sounds like a huge headache.
And that's the fear, right? I don't want to coordinate with strangers. But the answer is no. The consolidator manages the entire load plan. They handle all the complexity. For the shipper, it's still a simple door-to-door solution. They just get a bill that's half the size.
It seems so obvious once you hear it laid out like that.
That's the danger of stability. If your logistics are built for stability, you just repeat the same process. You book the container, you pay the bill. You don't ask if there's a better way until someone shows you the math.
Speaking of the way we've always done it, let's shift to the transaction side, the actual sales moment. Because there's a really cool scenario in the notes about this.
Right. This connects back to the carrier side, the trucking company.
So let's role play this.
Yeah.
I'm the customer. I need to get a pallet of widgets to Honolulu. I call you up. You're the carrier. I say, hey, I need a quote. You give me the standard rate. Let's say it's $4,500.
And you pause, you do that little sharp intake of breath, and you say, oof, $4,500. I really need to be at $4,000 to make this work.
Now, in a normal scenario, what happens next?
Normally, the sales rep freezes. They check the rate sheet. It says $4,500. They say, I'm sorry, I can't do that. Or let me ask my manager.
And the moment is gone. I'm hanging up and calling the next guy on my list.
Exactly. Speed kills in logistics sales. If you have to ask a manager, you've already lost. But with this offshore department model the source describes, the whole dynamic changes.
How so?
Well, the carrier knows they're plugged into this consolidation network. They know they aren't paying the full retail price for the ocean crossing because of the volume leverage. They're not paying for port wait times, so they have margin to play with.
So the sales rep doesn't have to check with anyone?
No. The rep can say, right then and there, if I can get you to $4,000, will you give us the business right now?
Boom. Done. I'm signing.
No approvals, no let me call you back. They capture the business immediately. You use the external expertise and the external volume pricing to close the deal internally, on the spot.
That speed is so crucial. But you mentioned volume leverage, and this brings up the biggest, scariest topic in the source material: technology.
The
The transportation management system. The source really attacks this build versus buy mentality.
It's a profound point. There's this instinct in logistics companies, especially as they grow, to want to own everything. We need our own software. We need our own TMS.
It's kind of an ego thing, right? We're big, so we need to build our own tech.
It is. But the source argues that when you build your own TMS, you are taking on a massive capital sink. You pay for the build, the maintenance, the servers, the upgrades.
And software becomes obsolete the second you launch it.
Right. So the question is, why are you building this yourself? Is writing code your core competency? Or is moving freight your core competency?
The source suggests this outsourcing argument, specifically mentioning a partnership with Global Trans. And for context, Global Trans is a huge deal.
They're the third largest 3PL brokerage in the entire nation. We are talking about massive scale.
And the argument is, why build your own little island of technology when you can just plug into a massive continent that already exists?
Exactly. By using a platform like the one GRG offers through Global Trans, you get immediate access to what are called blanket rates.
Okay, unpack that for us. What's a blanket rate?
A blanket rate is a negotiated price based on massive aggregated volume. Because Global Trans is moving billions of dollars of freight, they go to the carriers and get a rate that a single company could never, ever get on their own.
It's the Walmart principle, buying in bulk.
Exactly. And the source says these blanket rates will outperform your standard CSP, your customer-specific pricing, every time.
So you get the buying power of a giant without being a giant. And you get it with no IT department.
Zero internal investment. You don't have to buy the software. You don't have to hire the IT guy to fix it. It's a web portal. You log in, you quote, you book.
And there's an administrative relief aspect too, right? The notes mentioned audits. And let me tell you, nobody likes a freight audit.
It's the most soul-sucking part of the business, but it's critical. Freight bills are notoriously inaccurate, wrong class, wrong weight, reweigh fees.
And usually someone in the back office has to fight those battles. Hey, you charged me for a lift gate, but we have a dock.
Exactly. And that takes so much time. The platform described here handles all of that. It handles cargo claims, DOT compliance, and MFC audits.
If you can offload the headache of compliance and claims to a partner, you free up your team to actually focus on selling.
You stop playing logistics manager, and you start playing business grower. That's the shift.
It's compelling. It's basically asking companies, is logistics your core competency? And if it's not, why are you spending so much money trying to reinvent the wheel?
And the proof is in the pudding. The source notes that over 113,000 shippers have utilized these types of strategies. This isn't some startup experiment. This is a well-trodden path.
113,000. That's a small city of shippers.
And the promise they make, what they call the Grand Slam offer, is pretty bold. They claim they can help a business save 10 to 20% in just 30 days.
With no software investment.
And no long-term contracts. That's the key for me. It's a low-risk pivot. You aren't signing your life away. You're just testing a more efficient model.
It really circles all the way back to that first image we started with. The truck stopping at the water. Whether it's a physical barrier like the port, a financial barrier like the wait-out trap, or a tech barrier like trying to build your own TMS, these are all just walls we build for ourselves.
They are, and they're walls that cost a lot of money.
The source material ends with this really provocative thought that I think every business owner needs to hear.
Yes. The question is, how many of your team members run your logistics operation like it's their business?
Ooh. That hits hard. Because if it was their money, they would not be paying 10 grand for a container that's mostly empty air.
No way. If it was their money, they wouldn't just accept the $4,500 quote. They wouldn't settle for the port wall. They would find a way around it. They would find the efficiency.
And what this deep dive shows is that the efficiency exists. You just have to be willing to look for it.
You have to look beyond the shoreline.
And stop paying for empty air.
Absolutely. Question the default settings of your logistics, because usually the default setting is just expensive.
Well, there you have it. Whether you're a carrier leaving money on the table because you're scared of the ocean, or a shipper paying for space you aren't using, the message is clear.
There's a smarter way to move goods. There always is.
That's all for this deep dive. We'll catch you on the next one. Keep learning.
See you next time.